Hey everybody, Eric from Monoblog Studio is here again with another game dev stand-up audiolog. Yeah, I think this is not even a podcast, this is an audiolog. And I'm about to tell you that although we set a deadline to have a playable demo available by the 7th of October, we're not going to make it, unfortunately. Let me explain. I'm here again, still working on our 2D side-scroller video game, which is an independently developed video game, meaning that nobody's funding it, at least not yet. And it's two of us working on this super cool game, which we are working on for about 3 months now full-time, and before that in a chaotic manner for a couple of other months. So yeah, we are serious about this thing, and the reason why I'm not posting every week an audiolog is because we were just so busy and I really didn't have the brain power to make an episode. So that's it. You see, when you have a lot of things to do, then you neglect your marketing for sure. You just don't have the capacity. Our brains were kind of exploding, at least mine for sure. And I believe my partner's Martz's brain as well. So yeah, let me explain what we did, because probably that's why you are here listening to this extremely bad podcast or audiolog, right? As I indicated in the intro, probably this is just an audiolog. It should be a devlog, but we don't have the capacity to create devlogs with video and all that shit. Eventually we might get there, but now all you have is an audiolog. But here I will give you all the nitty-gritty details of what actually independent game developers do, at least try to do. So I hope you find this insightful. So this is stand-up meeting for week 13 and 14 of our game development journey. We are working on Strange Desert, just to use the keyword again, right? Strange Desert, at least that's the working title for now, but we are quite happy with that name for now. It represents the game that we're working on. So it's about resource management, settlement building, and a bit of tower defense will be also part of this game. So pretty cool stuff, handcrafted 2D graphics. I think that's all you need to know. That's all I could really explain on an audiolog version, I guess. I let you use your imagination, but you can follow me on X to get a glimpse of the game, which is actually in the description of the episode, so it's easy to get there. All right, so I'm going to sum up what we achieved and what we did not achieve. So the cool thing is that although we are missing the deadline, we learned a ton, and actually setting deadlines is kind of beneficial because I believe the change between the state of the game a month ago versus now is extremely huge. So I think it's cool if in case you're working on a game, you get your shit together and you just get into execution mode, and that's what we did. So I think it's worth. At the same time, though, we had to obviously do a reality check that I think our scope was quite ambitious for that 4 weeks of deadline that we set a month ago. And we did not manage to actually make it. So we will extend this development period, and we gave ourselves 2 more weeks to actually kind of get this to a state where we feel comfortable with showing it to people and do another round of playtest, because this now represents a lot more the game that we want to actually make and release. So what we achieved during the past 2 weeks. First of all, I worked a lot on art, and actually I get this question, not really online, but when talking to friends and various people about game development, is that what is it that an artist would do, right, full time on a project? And believe it or not, it's hard to, well, it's not hard to explain. I'm here to explain, because I think probably people imagine that you just draw through characters during a week and that's it, right? Like that's the end of the story. And then all the rest is just programming. And I think that's actually not right. Well, not right. I could prove it that's not how it works. Producing art happens through iterations, meaning that you create the first version, which is pretty crappy, and then a second version, a third version, and the prototype. You also prototype art, not just gameplay. Quite important to mention. And it takes a while to actually get to a level where the game starts to feel consistent, where the buildings, the characters, the backgrounds, the text, the UI, all of it starts to kind of come together. And believe it or not, I spend quite a lot of time on that. It's not just one day. Sometimes I underestimate. I think just like probably you would underestimate it. You think, oh, it's just drawing, right? Just find somebody who can draw and that's it. Like it's 2 or 3 days and you're off to go. That's not the case. And obviously you have to also prepare the art assets in a way that it's usable in Unity, which also a lot of time I kind of talked about this. And actually that's why you spend a lot of time. And the moment you realize that all the characters, every single small part of their costume, every single button, every single icon, every single piece of text, every single UI model, every single background element, building element, UI outlines, those are for you to make, right? And believe it or not, it's a lot of work. Like you should just maybe just sit down and observe a video game and count all the individual components that you see. You gloss over it as a player, right? Like, oh, having a menu, you think maybe you just download an asset and poof, you have all the menu structure and everything. But no, I'm making all of that shit and it's a lot of fucking time. So what I worked on is key art. So key art is usually or typically something that you would put on a cover or a thumbnail of the game. So for example, if you search for this game on Steam, then it has to have an art, right? Some kind of title or logo or whatever. We call it the key art. And we also use this in the main menu of this demo right now. And I managed to finally produce the version 1 of this, right? Cool example that I created it. I think it's good. It's better than not having anything. But I also feel now after looking at it for 2 weeks that it's a good start. I think it's a version 1 and probably it has to go through iterations because although it looks good and again, better than nothing, but I still believe it's not really up to the industry standard key art that we typically see on such games, but I'm going to iterate on it. So, but for now, for this demo, I think we have a version that is enough. But I'm also dissatisfied with it, right? That's what you need to know. You may hear my anxiety coming through my voice because I look at it and I see that it could and should be much better, but this is how far I got. It took me 2 days to make it. And also Martz implemented it probably in a couple of hours to have final a main menu. We already had a main menu, but it was just like blank, like, a dark blue background, like flat background with white buttons on it, new game options, exit, and that's it. So now it looks better now, much better, and it looks like a game main menu. So that's what I worked on. I also redesigned all of the buildings. So this is a strategy game, resource management. So it has a lot of buildings and it's interesting. It's also an interesting learning curve for me that it's not just the characters that give a game a character, but also the buildings. The buildings are actually even more prominent. They take up even more of the real estate or the screen that you are looking at. And if your buildings are not having any personality or they are not really consistent, which was the case for us because I didn't really put too much effort into the buildings before, at least in terms of consistency. So anytime, we had an idea to have a new building, then I just kind of sketched it, I colored it, but I didn't really put all the existing buildings next to each other and see if they work together. So unfortunately, when we played the game, it really just, my eyes were bleeding when I recognized that, oh my God, these buildings don't really work together. They all have a very different artistic language. So I had to kind of fix that, and it took me a week, so like 5 days. And the cool part is that, now again, if you think about it, I think in total probably I spent just 1 month on building these buildings and creating them and figuring out. So like I'd say that 3 weeks, maybe even 4 altogether, when I was just like trialing, testing, trying to come up with a building and scrapping a lot of them. And yeah, I have actually quite a lot of scrapped buildings too. And eventually now that enabled me to get to this level where I'm quite happy with it. One of the most important learnings is that I made them the same width, so meaning that they're from a size point of view they are quite similar, and it just helps the player to actually mentally know how much buildings or how many buildings they can build on a particular territory. So it's important to actually introduce this consistency, but also for me as an artist, it's quite a bit of a challenge, right? That I don't have the ultimate freedom to just draw anything I want, right? I have to kind of stay between certain boundaries in order to make sure that this plays well as well. It feels good to play and put or build those buildings in the gaming world. So it was quite a bit of work, and I think it's in a much better place now. So up until now, I was kind of criticizing the game because I was not really happy with the backgrounds, but now I realize that when the buildings are actually good that you build in this game world, they also kind of, they are so important and so integral elements of the overall aesthetics of the game. And by just, creating better buildings, the game automatically looks and feels better and much higher quality. So it's pretty cool. So that was all the work. Then also we have a beacon system, meaning when you are basically what you have to do is, in order to expand your territories, there's these strange ancient alien beacons in the desert, in this strange desert, and you have to put some characters or allocate some characters to decrypt the secret meaning of these beacons. And the moment they do it, then the fog goes away and your territory expands. It's quite cool. And finally, I managed to come up with a beacon that feels alien, feels like out of this world, because we also have this huge like conspiracy theory and alien things in this game. And the important part, when I looked at the key art and I designed the key art with actually an alien on it, I felt that actually the game, when you start playing the game, it doesn't have too many alien things yet, but I really wanted to have it. And I felt that, okay, the beacon could be the first thing that kind of, it's a bit off, right? So when you look at those typical desert buildings and whatever, and tools and the whole aesthetic, that's very Egypt and deserty, but I was really missing something that communicates that there's some extraterrestrial, activity here on this planet. And now the beacon finally brings that vibe. And I'm gonna keep adding more touches like that to the game, so it feels a little off. It feels a little, not just earthy. And a lot of work went into the UI, and I think that's the most important learning also for me. And now I think I'm getting better at estimating the work, that if we have a new idea and we have to do something, then, kind of how long would it take? So the reason why I had to add UI components is because we also added some new features to the game, such as a recruiting system in order to be able to add more workers to your settlement. Also, we came up with an idea to have like housing need for our workers, meaning that in the desert, if they have a house built, then they just work faster and better. That means that typically if you come up with this idea, it's not just that you need to, as an artist, you need to create new houses or add like a tavern, but also it has user interface requirements. You need to have new icons, maybe new menus, new text, and new models for it, right? And also these cards and information cards. So all of it is part of the the deal. And basically, Marzi also has to implement those things. So that's it. It's like I have to be really careful. So when new features are coming up and there's a new idea, it's not just that I just draw a new building. It has a lot of other dependent deliverables, which now I know. So yeah, that could keep me busy longer than I usually expect at the beginning. And I think last but not least, what we really did is we played the game a lot. So I played the game a lot, and probably it's good. And I think that's the benefit of creating this game together, that Marzi is not alone with the game. Because I think if I would do the art, if I would be in Unity all the time, I would start to not understand the game or not see the game as a player would, right? But since I am working on the art, but that's more of a static thing, right? It comes to life when you put it into the game. So I'm not spending too much in the game, and I think I could play and test the game maybe a little better, have a different perspective on things, because I'm not so used to it like Marzi is, right? Because he's building the whole thing. So we played it a lot. And I think one of the biggest things that we started to do, and that's kind of what blew up the scope a little bit, is that a month ago or even a couple of weeks ago, when you played the game, it was good, but it felt quite linear, meaning that you could just figure out how to reach the objective. And then anytime you played the level again, then you just knew already the key, right? It's like, you know the method, you know the most efficient method. And we came to the conclusion that the reason for that is because we don't really give enough variety and enough options to the player to choose how they want to go about building the settlement. Do they want to expand first, maybe build first, or buff the characters first, or go for this type of resource or that type of resource. So we just felt, it was quite thin in terms of options, and that's why we added these new features to the game. And I think it now I also felt, when after playing it many times, when I came back now with this new build, I was a little lost. And I think that's what we also wanted to achieve, is that to not feel that this level is so linear and there's one secret method to solve it and you are done. So we wanted to go away from this level 1, level 2, level 3 type of gameplay where you just figure out what's the best strategy and that's the only strategy that's best. So we really wanted to give the options. So there's no best strategy, there are just strategies, I guess. That's pretty cool, and I think a lot of learning. And obviously when you add more systems to the game, and Martz is quite proud, and I'm also really proud of him, that although we now have a lot of systems added to the game, it's not falling apart. Yeah, sometimes it bugs out. I think that's totally normal. And sometimes we have some clashes, yeah, when certain systems clash with each other and it bugs out. But regardless of that, I think now it's getting better. But obviously, the moment you tweak something, you may ruin something else. I think the balance is an important factor that we are still going to do. And I think that's how we're going to really spend the next 2 weeks. And that's the end of this podcast, or the last segment of this podcast, or audiolog, excuse me. What's left, right? What are those things that we actually did not manage to put into the game? So I'm not even going to talk about the pitch deck and the trailer are totally, something that we will need to come back to outside of the next 2 weeks, because we will not have time for that. But we also need to, we will add a bit of a new feature to, because in this game you have to build buildings. That's the ultimate objective, to build strange monuments like pyramids or fucked up statues and things like that. But the most important thing is that right now you could just start building those anywhere, and I think it really clutters the overall experience. So when you look at the map and when you could just start building these things anywhere, I don't know, it just feels off, and we want to actually create a dedicated place, a building site for it. So that's something we will add. We also want to add enemy system, a very simple one. So we have more ambitious plans for an enemy system, but we also want to add at least a simple one. So hopefully we will make that. We also need to complete the UI, because the UI is, I think Marzi got bored halfway through, because building the UI, implementing it, it's kind of a grind, guys. It's not as glorious as you would maybe build an enemy system. But anyways, we have to finish that. And also what is totally missing is music sounds. Yeah, that's not gonna make it, and we will think about alternatives because we just short-staffed. I think, within these 2 weeks we'll not be able to get to that part. We will try to actually find somebody to collaborate with, because we believe that would really accelerate and give us also, like, we are not good at this, right? So I think we could get to a certain level of like maybe creating music as sounds, but it's just too much time. We don't have that time, I feel. We don't have an end screen yet, or some kind of, when the objectives are met or accomplished or completed, then I feel we should celebrate a little better, with the player, and just, elevate that positivity that's absolutely lacking right now. And I just came to this realization right now as I record this podcast that we didn't really add that to the list, but I believe that polishing needs to happen. And also we are lacking quite a few animations. So because when you allocate workers to build a building, a refinery or a military building, then they are going there and they take out their hammers and start to build it, and there's dust and all of it. It's pretty cool, but it's not happening everywhere, right? Because there's various scenarios, like when you chop wood or you mine, or where you are refining in a smelter, right? You should be shoveling, or when you are working in the sawmill, you should be sawing in that case. So there's a lot of animations that are missing, which we want to add, that would actually make the game satisfying to look at, because it's actually pretty cool that we have this small busy town feeling, right? When every worker is working, then it's just satisfying to look at. Sometimes that's the only game. You don't really do anything, right? You're thinking of your next step, what you should be doing. You may wait for a couple of things to complete. And by the way, we added a whip system, meaning that you can use the whip to make your workers work faster. But in case you do that, they lose some health, and then eventually you will need to park them in a spa where they would get back their health, which is pretty awesome, right? So it's all about managing these resources, managing basically people, and sometimes forcing them to work faster than they actually can. But that means that their health's gonna go down, just like in a good old firm, right? Or in reality, when you get overworked, you know that your health is going to react to that. Unfortunately, that's it. So it's pretty cool. A lot of things, right? So 2 more weeks we added to the timeline, and I really do hope that we get this game to a state where we are kind of happy with it. Actually, I think both Marts and I are maximalists, unfortunate, or perfectionists, and so I don't think we will ever be satisfied with this game, but we do our best. So that it's gonna be cool to play and delight hopefully some of you who would give it a shot. So yeah, I think just last thing, because I know this log is getting a bit long, but emotionally, this was a roller coaster personally for me, because exactly because of these reasons, right? That I'm a perfectionist, and this is also at the same time my first game that I really take seriously, right? This is no longer a prototype. Really want this thing to be played by others, and we really dedicate our energy and full time focus, right? We are in focus full time, and we are not really working anywhere else. We're just doing this game right now. And oftentimes the self-doubt kicks in. I think that's part of it. I would think I played a lot of the games, and unfortunately I have the tendency of comparing our game to other games. And for example, when I look at the key art and just the graphical presentation of Cult of the Lamb or things like that, I'm like, I want to kill myself, right? This is not I mean, just joking, but I realized that, oh my God, I'm not on that level, and I wish I would be on that level. And then self-doubt kicks in. Am I good at this? Can I get to that level? Can I elevate this game to that level? And it's just all on my shoulders from an artistic point of view. And I do believe that Marty sometimes have maybe similar feelings from a gameplay point of view. Like, can I make this gameplay fun? Can I make this gameplay, like, can we avoid having mostly negative reviews on Steam? Right? Something like that. Think about it that way. So with that, I think that's just part of it. I don't really have a solution for this other than just keep going. And that's what we are doing. We just keep going. We keep making this game, and that's it. And I really do hope that eventually that will pay off, and then we will bring to you guys, or to ourselves maybe, a game that we are proud of. That's it. So that's the stand up for week 13 and 14, and talk to you in the next one. Cheers. Bye. By the way, follow us. It's in the description of the episode. Yeah, thanks. Bye.